Morning, London, in a rainy day, but always positive. Good morning. Welcome to Sales Frequency, where we tune in, tune up, and sell smarter. I'm Jesus.
And I'm well, and today we're responding to some pretty big news from the UK government. There is a lot out there at the moment, but we're really focusing something that hits quite close to home for anyone especially invested in leadership development.
Yeah, from January 26, the public funding for level 7 apprenticeships and master level programs, right, will be restricted to those aged 21 and under. So for most mid-career professionals, that support is disappearing.
And we think that's going to leave a real gap for sales leaders looking to build the strategic and transformational capabilities today's world demands.
Yeah, so the apprenticeships are since the medieval times in England, right, where there was open to jobs and mastery and true leadership often came with the age and experience, right? So guild members didn't just train early career individuals; they nurtured professionals who matured into civic and commercial leaders over the time, right? And since 2010, the management and leadership apprenticeships, including level 7, have driven internal promotions, improved retention, and revenue uplift, right? And especially when targeted at existing staff transition into strategic roles. So there was a return on investment important part. So we are asking you today and for this week, how do you plan to develop yourself now? So this is the poll we've got live in LinkedIn. We have 4 different answers, like self-funded future learning, push to corporate sponsorship, shift to modular short courses, or maybe other, and you can just describe. So please go to the poll and feel free to jump in. We will have in a few minutes our guest, which is Phil Squire. So Will.
Yeah, so we've often said kind of sales leadership is one of the most undervalued capabilities in business. And I think anyone recognizing in sales, quite often what happens is a sales professional will get promoted to a sales management and then sales leadership position. But they often identify that there's different skills that need to be developed when you move into that management position. So Jesus, what's your point of view? Do you think that the recent announcement of the sort of level 7 funding kind of reinforces that view?
Well, the cut in the funding is not really helping, right? Because if you think about that, so there is a progression. There is when we recruit people, either if it's for sales or any other practice, we are always talking about the career, the development, the skills development, and for every part of the career, everyone needs different skill sets, and not everything comes from the uni or from your previous, education, or it's inside the DNA of the individual, right? So you need specific skills for specific moments in your career. I believe that by limiting the fact that you only can take the funding from the government below 21 years, I mean, this means that you really have to start really, 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 really early, right? For your sales career, start with a level 4, level 5, level 6, and in order to be able to just trigger the point in for level 7 just before you are under 21.
Yeah.
So I believe it's going to be really limiting, and but nevertheless, I believe that there is a point in the return on investment, Will, because at the end, the fact why they do this kind of courses is, okay, there is a funding, but the important thing is there is a return. So there are outcomes. Otherwise, even if it's free, the companies will not engage their employees into these long programs.
Yes, and I mean, I think it's really difficult to kind of get into the mind of the decision making from the government when it comes to the funding, but it seems to be clear that they're shining on spotlights on the younger generations entering the workforce and upskilling them. But from where we sit from a sales point of view, and how that now sort of leaves a gap in the market. It's a real shame that I think the government's taken this point of view, because we know that the impact of developing senior sales leaders really not only kind of unlocks the potential for them, developing their leadership qualities, but also how that impacts on the wider team and providing the kind of frameworks that can unlock the potential of the more junior people in their team. Yeah. So I wonder if you if you have a point of view on that, Jesus.
Yeah, definitely, right. So at the end, if you think about, you may have like a course or a program, and you can train the sales professionals, but one of the best trainings they are having is on the day interactions with the senior leadership, because they will look how they do things, how they tackle the challenges, what are their toolbox, etc. So this is what they are looking into, right? And we see that in we've done a lot of programs already with a lot of students who have completed the level 7 senior sales leader program, right? And they often talk about the confidence that came from turning gut instinct into structured leadership. So we give them the tools, we train by working, right? So it's by practice, and we have great examples like Nick Rose from Sharp that launched an entire sales academy off the back of his thesis, right? So it's really, when you train the leaders, it's because they are going to be training the, I will not call it juniors, early career or sales professionals that are just learning or going their path through this leadership, right? So it's I mean, taking this out of the equation it might be a problem, right? Because then
Yes, and we also kind of we know, having engaged with multiple organizations, that it's really important to address kind of I guess cultural change, and it starts from the leadership team. Yes, if you want to see a shift in behavior of your sales team, you need to bring the leadership team with you, and this is where we see the impacts, I think, of taking them through a senior leader program such as the senior sales leadership program. So yes, it seems to be a slightly strange decision, we feel, but I think time will tell if the government changes anything, because who knows. But what would you say are the options right now that employers have? So let's say you're a head of sales right now and the funding rug has just been pulled. What options are realistically on the table?
Well, I mean, the first one for me is to understand the outcome and the return on investment of this, right? Because when you buy into this concept that is really delivering your value, then it's not just a matter of you have funding or not, right? If you really recognize that it delivers return on investment, delivers a fast track into new opportunities, increase your winning ratios, etc. This is where it's important, and then the companies will start to think about, okay, it's really crucial to invest, even if we don't have the help from the government, right? So we've seen that in other geographies, because this is quite unique in the UK, but we have customers in other geographies where there is no funding from the government, but at the same time, there are companies spending a fortune to develop their professionals, and that's for a reason, right? This is because it deserves to do it. So I think one of the potential options is companies analyzing the return on investment when they really believe on it, then going through a program that is funded by the company. Self-funded by the individual, I mean, it may happen. There are some other options where the companies fund part of this and the other part is funded by the individual. but it's maybe the kind of loyalty from the individual is not so big as it is fully funded by the company itself, right? And of course, there is some clauses that people have to stay a couple of years in the company and things like that. But I believe when you start to show to the customers, to the employees, sorry, that you have a structured um, training or education program across the different levels of your career, this is what really engage people and motivate people to stay in the company. Because let's not forget, it's much more expensive to hire a new person, a mid or senior leader, right, rather than retaining the ones you have. So it's important to start from the beginning. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I agree, Jesus. And I'm just looking at some of the comments in the chat. We've it's interesting to get the perspectives of some of our audience. We have someone here who's commented the government often fails to understand the end-to-end nature of business. They like to talk about innovation and engineering, but they don't understand the nuances of pre-sales, sales, post-sales relationships. They also live in an FY bubble, so often don't appreciate the fact that ROI is often midterm and not in year.
Yeah, you're very true, and thank you. Thank you,
Here's
Jas,
Yaz,
for sharing this comment. I do believe when you see all the news we have to date on the level 7 and the funding in general, they are they are they are talking a lot about manufacturing, or like all the type of apprenticeships that are not connected to sales. And this is okay, right? I mean, I'm not saying we should not dedicate funds to this, but if you don't dedicate funds to sales, you will not be excelling in sales. So then, okay, you can manufacture whatever you want, but it's not going to be sold. So it's part of the chain. So you need to think about the value chain holistically speaking, probably, and yeah, and not forget the sales part, right? Not just because you are focusing on all parts.
Yeah. Just going back to the question I asked. So, the funding rug has been pulled. What options are realistically on the table? And for any employer listening, obviously there are alternatives. There are different apprenticeships that you could consider at a lower standard than the level 7. For Consalia, we're just focusing on the higher degree and postgraduate apprenticeships that we run.
Yeah.
However, we do know from our experience, again, just focusing on sales, there are different options that you could put your leadership team on, but it's a question as to whether you're seeing leadership development as essential or an expendable skill set. And our perspective is it's certainly essential at the moment, especially as I think we're working in such a period of time that is as uncertain as it is, and also one that is really pushing organizations to innovate rapidly with the AI on everyone's doorstep and everything like that. So there are alternatives to consider. Like, do you put your leadership team on an MSc program outside of the apprenticeship framework? That's an option. There are developing coaching cultures. Putting your leadership teams through sales coaching for transformation, for example, and hybrid learning models. There are different ways that you can develop the leadership skills over time, but I think it needs kind of real buy-in from the top. And it's too early to tell, Jesus, whether or not we're going to see that. I'm hoping that those who are currently doing a level 7 have seen the impact, whether it's in senior sales leadership or any other level 7 program, and they will continue to invest in training people to that sort
you're
of
completely
master's
right. So this is like a proof of fire. So
yeah.
That you are completely right. I mean, the companies that were enjoying the funding for level 7 And now they have to think about the outcome, the return on investment of, because it's not just the money provided by the government. As I say, it's time of the professionals engaged in a program. So it's time they are not selling; they are just being educated, right? So so they really need to see into the return on investment of this, and if the numbers work, I mean, they're salespeople; they will just buy into it, right? They will have to. Then we come into the bureaucracy internally in the company, because then it's not something that comes funded from the government, it's something that comes from the budget of the company. So then you have to talk with finance, then you have to talk to different departments, and then from the budget you were expecting to spend on the 2026, maybe you need to think about, okay, I need to reserve some part of the budget for this training, and then you have to justify and go through committees and blah blah blah. But and sometimes this is depending on the size of the organization. This is not easy. So that's the reason why I'm fully with you. It needs a full ownership from the top. It needs intent, because you really cannot download transformation, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think there's been so much focus on this recent announcement on kind of early careers, developing the early career teams. But what happens if the mid-career professionals can't grow, or the senior leadership teams don't? What's the implication of this, Jesus?
Well, that's a huge risk, because as I said before, you know, day to day, all the sales professionals are looking into their sales leaders, what they do, what are their mindsets, their sales mindsets, what is their behaviors, what is their culture. If they are not properly trained, properly educated in one direction, then it's like you can even have multiple directions in a company. Maybe you can have some of the sales mindsets that are not positive and negative. So the sales leadership is not something you do well by accident. If we stop developing the people leading teams today, we stall cultural change, customer innovation, and performance gains.
Right.
Right?
That is yeah.
Yeah.
That is pretty
Yeah, and as you said,
significant.
in a sales world facing AI, hybrid work, economic flux, you need steady hands who are still learning, right? So AI, we've commented this, and we will have special programs for this that we are preparing, amazing ones. But AI is going to be changing a lot of things, not just in sales, but in procurement, in finance, in recruitment. I mean, we're looking into this, not just AI tools or agents or agentic. It's also, everything around. Now you have this technology power to, fast forward whatever you were doing in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks down to minutes or a couple of hours. Then how do you use the time you have wisely in a more human thing, right? So it's not just really that we need to focus on sales mindsets for lead, etc. It's that the entire context is changing very rapidly with this AI wave, and we need to incorporate this into the education and into the day to day, how they are going to be incorporating that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, we've seen it time and time again that in order to create a culture in which sales can flourish, it really does start with the um, with the leadership team. And I think the leadership team need to be adapt or very very able in managing change in the world that we're living in. I think they need to have to develop those skills and the frameworks to kind of unlock the potential of their sales teams. And I think my concern is when you're not addressing you're not developing the skills, those knowledge, skills and behaviors required at a senior sales leadership level, then, as you said, it really, it can have implications around the success of the wider team. So we hope that that employers are thinking about this, are kind of being proactive in terms of, well, how moving forward, how can they support their development of their senior sales leaders, unless of course, Jesus, we're forgetting this, unless of course they're going to be under 21, in which case they can join the programs.
Yeah, that's true. But if you think about it, it's starting very early, right? And having things quite clear. So it's not such an easy thing. I remember when you face to do an MBA or a master, you normally said don't do the master just right after your uni. I think we have Phil here. Phil is joining us.
Correct. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning, Phil.
Morning. Morning.
Very, very welcome. So
yeah, thank you.
It's great to have you with us. Let's jump in, because I know we have only a few minutes left. So as of 2024, the UK government allocates approximately 3 billion annually to support apprenticeship training across England. Nothing based on sales specifically, to be honest. You've worked with sales, Phil, with a lot of sales leaders across multiple industries, many of whom have gone through programs like the MSc in Leading Sales Transformation. What was your initial reaction to this announcement, Phil?
I think we saw it coming, and it's one of disappointment, obviously, because it's it's taking away an opportunity for sales leaders to get access to some absolutely fantastic sort of learning. I'm actually here running a workshop for apprentices as we speak. And it's quite interesting, sort of the conversations I've been having with some of those on the program about the whole rationale for the program being potentially at risk now. So yeah, it's one of disappointment. Can't understand the logic behind the decision for it to be dropped. So yeah, one of disappointment, and I'm not quite sure quite what we're going to be doing apart from running another workshop, I think another cohort later this year. But I guess disappointment.
Yes, I understand. I think the efforts of the government are more focused on maybe all the type of apprenticeships, not just the sales. But we were discussing briefly, Phil. We believe, Will and me, we believe that when companies engage with level 7 funded programs, it's not just because it's free. It's of course because there is an outcome, there are results, there is a return on investment, because they invest the time of the sales professionals, right? And they connect to this way of doing sales. So we were discussing that probably what will be the options now for the companies, and we were thinking, well, if the companies may estimate the value and the outcomes that comes jointly with these education programs, they will maybe think about fund themselves. But of course, there is a process, and then you have to allocate budget that you were not previously allocating, etc., etc. But what do you think are the options now for companies that, because this is an announcement from the government, it's happening from January, maybe this changes in a few months later, but what do you think might be the options for the companies valuing really this kind of education where they don't have the funds?
I think again it comes back to what their sort of priorities are for recognizing how important it is to develop their sales leaders. So from that perspective, if companies still feel that the business imperative is still there to put their teams through this kind of program, then obviously that's available, but it simply won't be levy funded. We have, there are some positives, I guess, you could get from how we might approach companies who want to prioritize this investment in terms of there's much less bureaucracy involved because you don't have all of the side activities to do with the apprenticeship qualification as well as getting some kind of certificate. So there will be less of that involved in administering and taking part in the program for both the students and for us. So yeah, and of course, we'll still be running the exec masters program as well. So there are going to be options, and of course we're going to be talking to companies about what their options are.
Absolutely. I think, just to echo what you said, Phil, in the very short term, anyone listening who feels like, okay, we need to grab the last opportunity to put our senior sales leaders onto the program, we are planning to run a cohort in December. So, of course, let us know if you're interested. Happy to have a conversation. And then moving into 2026, there are other options available, and I think Jesus and we're thinking about addressing what other kind of capability skills caps or frameworks that sales leaders need, and we're looking at how we can develop those programs in kind of short, sharp, modular content as well. So although what I'm trying to say is, yes, it's disappointing news, as Phil mentioned, I think it could also be a source of innovation for us and how we respond to it and how we think about
that's
developing
true. Also,
those programs.
Also, as we commented, the funding is very specific of the UK, and we have other customers out of the UK that don't have any funds from the government in Germany, in Spain, in different countries. But they are going through leadership education, and that's for a reason, right? It's because it really deserves. There is an outcome, there is a return after that. So that's what probably what is a mindset change that probably we need to see within the UK. So Phil, we always say it's not just a final remark. It's not just an individual growth, right? It's really a cultural transformation. So I don't know if maybe the question I have for you is, there will be companies trying to explore new avenues where they fund themselves either a full program or a more structured, laser focused, small intervention. But for those ones that they are not doing this exploration, what is the risk you see? Because we have the early career professionals that are still covered by the funding, and if this middle management and management funding stops and the companies are not moving forward to fund some training that covers them, then what is the risk with the new generations coming in with these sales leaders that maybe are not educated? Do you see any risk there?
Yeah, of course. I think it comes back to how organizations see the business imperative. We're living in a world it's so constantly changing, and the sales leaders play this link between strategy and execution in the field. And unless you are equipping this group of leaders with those skills, you're at risk of realizing the growth potential into the future. So yeah, I think it's highly risky, particularly in this current world. The title of the kind of programs we're running is around leading sales transformation, and that's the context of the world in which we're living, and where we're giving people the skills to address those issues at a very practical, at a very personal level. So yeah, I realize we're running out of time, but
yes,
there's a huge risk if this level is not addressed with serious development. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you very much for coming today.
No problem. Sorry, I was a bit late jumping on. Yeah.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
So I think we are finished, Will. I don't know if you want to do any final remark.
Final remarks, I think. Don't forget your senior leaders, I think. Although
Yeah.
although the levy funding news is challenging, it might pose challenges to training and how employers start to think about it. Bear in mind, there are options still available, and yes, I think from a provider point of view, it can be a source of innovation for us as well. So I'm sort of excited about how we are going to respond to it moving into 2026, and hope to offer very compelling training programs to those that still need it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from you, Jesus?
No, well, the thought is that, as you pointed out, right? So it's not black or white. It's not the full program and the full budget and the full engagement. There are other options, and indeed, we are already working with some of our customers on a progressive program that's small, starts with several workshops, several modules, something short that delivers outcomes very quickly, and gradually, where they are embracing all the sales transformation, the education we are delivering, then this will naturally come to a wider programs, right? So and it's a way to potentially gradually introduce this new status quo into the companies and convince the finance departments that the budget is not the full budget, it's just a small one, starting for that, and then you progress, right? Exactly. So probably that might be the route. Of course, we have also these programs as well, and mini interventions. So feel free to comment on other options you may think about, or to contact us if you need. Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you, Jesus.
Very much for the audience. The poll is still open. Please vote, and we will come back next week. We will announce very soon the new topic for next week. Thank you.